Let's go ahead and kick off our webinar. So today we're going to be talking about employee experience, trends that drive or hinder success in the modern workplaces. I know based on all the people who are joining today, this particular topic is of great interest to a lot of people, but especially to HR people worldwide. HR people are always trying to design the employee experience that they know is going to push their business outcomes forward. So we're very happy to be discussing this very, very pertinent topic to you all here. So this is our panel. We're going to be starting with Mindy. Mindy, if you'd like to just speak a little bit about yourself, and we'll go to Ellen after that.
Hey, so I've been a HR veteran for as a practitioner and leader for over 25 years, and stepped into creating and founding Agile in HR. I get the amazing honor to walk alongside now HR professionals and leaders that are in-house to mentor, coach, and advise and guide them, and really shifting the way in which people are discussed in workplaces from being transactional activities to actual strategic part of how work is done, and really helping rethink how we get work done today from a holistic ecosystem perspective. And people are core and center at that, and caring about people is also caring about revenue.
Ellen?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I've been on the, I guess I call it the people side of business for over 12 to 15 years in various areas that are parallel or in partnership with HR. And in the last few years, I particularly have been passionate about employee experience strategy and design. And that's really based on looking at the employee experience from a human design perspective, and even applying design thinking, which is used a lot in technology creation, product design, web design, et cetera. But it hasn't really been applied to the HR discipline. And so it's bringing that employee perspective, into the equation as you're developing your processes and policies and activities. And I now have opened my own consulting firm to be able to offer that expertise, as well as change management and employee engagement and communications, and other areas, brand building, to a greater range of clients.
Wonderful. And I think a lot of the people who are on the call here, they might have interacted with me in the past. My name is Amrinder Arora, and I lead the team at ClayHR. Many of the people who are here who happen to be ClayHR customers, I know many times we might have spoken in the context more of the software and the different modules that you're using, etc. But today's conversation, what we're hoping to do here is by bringing in industry experts here to be able to help you design. Even though you use a certain technology, you use the platform, but how do you design the right employee experience on top of that? And I use the term right employee experience because ultimately, you know your business best. You know what is the right outcome that you're trying to drive from there. And by using some of the best practices, you can design the experience that's going to help you with that. So these are all different things we'll try to explore today. We will first of all start with what is employee experience, why it even matters, and what are some of the key trends. And then we'll go a little bit into what are the common challenges. After that, we will go into what are some of the ways that you can launch that successful EX program. If you have a limited HR teams, and I know that in many times the HR teams are quite stretched, they already have a lot of things on their plate. So if you want to launch an EX program, but you say, hey, I don't have any additional resources and budget to be able to hire people that's going to do that, how exactly you can do that with your current team. And that's exactly what I will call on Mindy and Ellen to help us through on how they can do that. And when you ask your questions, please feel free to ask questions not only on technology, for which I know that you already have a lot of resources through your success managers. If you're already using ClayHR or if you're using a different system, you already have that. But here, because we have the benefit and the advantage of having Mindy and Ellen here ask questions about how can I launch a successful program considering these dynamics. So we look forward to your questions and answers as well. We have left some time where you're going to be able to ask those questions, and we should be able to go into them. Okay. So Ellen, I'll ask you to get us started a little bit with what is employee experience and then why it even matters.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sure, everybody's noticed over the last like 5 years or so that the words employee experience have become part of our vernacular in business and whatnot. It's been associated with everything from various roles and functions, different types of activities, and even technology platforms that are related to the workplace and HR function. Essentially, overall, I think a very positive thing is that employers are starting to recognize that in order to retain their employees, in order to get the best out of their employees, that there has to be something along the lines where they're helping employees be more successful and have a positive experience. So that's really great. But more accurately, what is employee experience, right? Think about it. It's all the interactions an employee has with the company, with their supervisors, their coworkers, right from the time that they join the company, even I'd say, even when they're going through the interview process, to the time they actually leave the employer for whatever reason they're leaving. But even more so, it's not necessarily just about doing those things. It's about how employees feel about the employer, their jobs, and their work relationships through all those different experiences. Right. So it's kind of similar to the concept of a brand, a company's brand. Um, it's more about how the customer feels about your brand that will guide their decision on whether to, say, purchase or not from you. And it's the same thing for employees. More so with employees, it is more than just how they feel about their employer. Obviously, it goes much deeper than that, but that's the main differentiation with employee experience. But however, HR isn't the sole owner of EX, although because of the range of people-centric responsibilities and disciplines that HR is responsible for, it certainly has a large share of the experience. But think about it, again, we're talking about all the different interactions. So it's um, you know, basically, how easy is it to get your work done? It could be, your workplace environment itself, if you're working in the office, or has the company given you sufficient resources to be able to operate productively from remotely. It is even the security. It's really, you think about it, and it's your team and teamwork and your performance, management process within the company. So it really goes across, really involving everybody in the company is responsible for everybody else's experience. So that's important, just to keep in mind that when management is putting everything on the shoulders of HR, they have to realize that everybody plays a role in this.
And I think, Ellen, of course, you'll also talk about why it matters so much, but just based on the previous slide, as you were talking about, there's so much that constitutes EX, right? So in
Right.
a minute, we're going to ask the attendees to tell us one sentence what it matters to, what it means to them. But anyway, go ahead with this slide first.
Oh, of course, sure. So, I've kind of intimated a little bit about the importance of employee experience, but, why is it now today becoming so important? And that's because overall, the experience employee has with the company in the end trickles down to affect the business. So for example, enhance product. If employees feel really good about what they're doing, they feel connected, they understand what the mission is and how they're connected to what the goals are for that quarter or for that year. They're have the tools and the resources to get their work done effectively. They're going to be more productive, right? And then that's going to improve business performance. As well, if not only if people are more kind of satisfied with their experience, but they just feel better coming to work. They don't have some of the stresses that maybe they had in another job, right? They're going to maybe be more likely to stick with that employer. It also, again, word of mouth. Employees talk to other people, right? And so if they're hearing that this is a great place to work, and people feel like, hey, I've really been able to be successful at this company, it's going to improve the ability for that company to attract, more top talent. It also stimulates greater innovation, again, because people are just more motivated and they feel more connected to what the company is trying to accomplish for their customers. It also facilitates kind of a faster buy-in and adoption when there's change, which, as we all know, there's something changing every day, right, with our work at our place of employment. And if people, again, are feeling connected, they understand, they feel a part of it, etc., they're going to be more likely to then help facilitate that change. And then in the end, happy employees, we've heard this, it results in happy customers, right? And I don't think I have to connect the dots on that one too much.
I think basically what I heard you say, Ellen, is that it's really good business sense. It's not
Yeah.
only something that you're doing good, it really makes good business. I mean, ultimately, if people are going to be more motivated to be working, along the company objectives, then, then that certainly is good. It just makes good business sense, right?
I like to say that focusing on the employee experience is a win-win for both the company or organization and their employees, right? Because if you help your employees be successful and thrive, the company's going to thrive.
Right. I think what I'm going to do is, Mindy, we'll ask you to kind of talk about, to tell us some of the trends here, but I'll quickly launch the poll here. All the attendees should see the poll come up. It's a free form question. Just give us one sentence. What does EX mean to you? Because Ellen gave us a lot of things that can comprise EX, but I just want to hear from the audience and what does it mean to them. When you write the answer, please feel free to include your name and city as well. That'll also give us a little bit of context as well. It's always interesting to hear. And Mindy, I'll bring up the next slide already, so you can kind of talk to us about.
I was like, man, I can't participate in the poll.
So let's wait. Let's give the audience about 30 seconds to answer. So audience, if you have started answering it, please go ahead and answer that here. Just what does it mean to you? Just give us like a short sentence. And I know it's not one of your big, radio buttons, which people like to see. Oh, that one. Here we're asking you to type. So hopefully you can still do that. So. I was reading this book. I have it somewhere around here. I can't remember the name, but basically I'll find it. I'm sure it'll come back to in a minute. I was actually sharing with the rest of the ClayHR team as well. But one of the specific things was, name comes to me. Well, it was really at least the first 4 chapters really all about mission-driven companies, all about mission-driven companies and how the companies whose own mission is super clear is, they tend to do very well. And I think, Ellen, when you were talking about the point that the employees may not have that much stress at other places, I think, in fact, this book makes it a slightly different spin on it. The stress that comes from whatever work that people are doing, that comes from a lot of things that are in the environment with respect to if they have to deal with a customer, or if there's a certain production issue, if there is a certain supply chain issue, they have to deal with it. if there's a war in a certain part, so the shipments are no longer flowing, that stress will be there. But the question really is, do the employees feel, hey, this is worth it? We're trying to serve our purpose here. The stress is worth it. Okay, I do understand that now I suddenly have to make 17 calls that I did not intend to call today, but it's worth it, because if I do this thing, then this will be the positive impact to this constituent, etc. So I thought that was a very interesting take on it, that you're not going to be able to eliminate stress. Sorry, Mindy.
I just love that, because I think it goes into like the number one trend of personalization, because I think when a company is so clear on its mission, it weaves it into every aspect of what they do, because they go back and actually use it as a decision point. Why are we doing this? Mission. Why are we hiring this person? Mission. They also, because the employee experience also from a workplace ecosystem really starts when we think about the employee journey, when we really think about what are all the stages in which we start to interact with someone in an organization, and what is that first moment that they learn about our mission. It can be from the moment that they are talking with a friend who happens to work at the company, from how are they seeing it described in a job description. And so even the words that we use matter when we're speaking to our audience, which is around this personalization of when we're, let's say, attracting the talent that is going to really resonate with our mission and want to be working and understand the impact of what they bring every day. So that 17 things in one day, I might not have that every day, but I understand why today I need to do that. And that all goes back to, because if we do this well, we're going to create personalization of messaging that has the mission in that. This is just one example of personalization that attracts the right people. But then we're also understanding and continually thinking about personalization through, often I look at this in the work that I do and I ask, who are your employees? And often people cannot get down below. We have managers and we have employees and maybe contractors. But then who are your managers? Who are your full-time employees who are individual contributors? And getting down to some, we call these personas, and then how we can use those personas, and how are we then being able to understand what are those moments that matter as we walk those personas through the employee journey, and what are the touch points within that journey. We start to get towards better personalization. And I could speak this whole time just about personalization, because I think it's so core and important. Like if you were to just do one thing and one trend, it'd be personalization. And really, because that also gets down to who are employees, and then how are we not only communicating them, but how are we actually listening? What is that two-way dialogue, and how are we setting that up in a way that we understand how do they best like to communicate? How do they best like to give feedback? How do they best like to dialogue? And I think that then follows really well into the well-being and mental health. Now, mental health started to become really a part of this conversation well even before COVID. We started hearing about mental health, I would say back in 2016. We started to hear people start to talk about this. I think that some incredible thought leaders like Brene Brown in her work with shame, and really helped to start to bring this to the forefront of our cultural conversation, and that our well-being as people and humans matters, and it impacts every aspect. It's not just who we are in our personal life, but it's how we show up at work, and it's who we are at work. And COVID just highlighted this as we saw the walls go down between work and home, and that we have one life, and that we don't work and the personal, we don't stop and pause. It's one. And we bring personal into the work, and we need to understand how we're doing that. And so well-being within the employee experience space, as Ellen so artfully described it and defined it, is necessary. It goes back to the personalization. What is motivating someone? Like, how are the emotional well-being of this person, and how is that impacting their behaviors, and being able to show up and be able to, hopefully that mission has some anchoral behaviors there. And for someone to be able to behave in that way, emotion becomes a part of it. I think then as we really look at Oh, go ahead. You can interrupt me, please. I get really passionate.
Mindy, even in the case of mental health and well-being, there was a cartoon that I saw some time ago that it was time of COVID, but the point could be made at any time that the underlying message of the cartoon was that somebody comes back from work
Yeah.
and they're talking to their spouse, and of course, whatever happened at their work is now really affecting them. They're still processing it. They're like, well, I was trying to do this, and why did that happen? And then the same thing in the second part of the
Yeah.
cartoon is the same thing next day. They're at work, and whatever has happened to at home, they're also
they're
brought.
bringing it to work.
Yes.
Right.
So you say and then I think then I was in my mind I was creating an extension of the cartoon. I was saying we'll hit perfect work-life balance when we achieve swappable memories.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're going to work. So in my car, I'm like, oh, I have to put on a new head because
Well, I think you bring
it's about the whole person, right?
Yes, it's about the whole person. And I think if there's, and it's not just an engagement survey, right? A sentiment survey that happened in the past, because how they felt that day at the moment they took it is going to really color their feedback at that moment. And so that's why I really think about how the two-way dialogue, how are we entering communication, and how can we get to, true check on what is the well-being, even starting out. People aren't good at even naming emotions. So how are we creating a safe place to even talk about this, even from starting with a manager coming into a team meeting and say, hey, are we entering this meeting green, yellow, or red? And let's just take a moment and quickly go around the room. One executive team I know that was so important for them, they created a team norm where they actually had an anonymous survey that went out to partners and spouses and say, how is this person coming home? And they were taking that feedback in themes. And because they found that the executives weren't wanting to, they didn't feel that they weren't able to truly name like how they were showing up. And I thought that was so interesting. And this can look different, right, in each workplace, which is what the beauty of employee experience is. Each workplace ecosystem is uniquely different. And we get to try things out, right? We may try out something and we'll evolve because then we're building trust. And so then we need to think of a new framework to get to a deeper depth. So, go ahead.
But there's this part here, I think is going to be.
I was just going to talk about this. Yes.
So much on people's mind here.
Yeah, it is.
People are being asked about it, but yeah, go ahead, touch upon this one.
Yeah,
as well.
I was just going to go there. Thanks for moving me forward. And so AI helps us, right, be able to really think about these things. Now, AI can help us, but it also is creating stress and fear that is entering in, and yes, and change 100%. And just thinking about like, how do we as organizations, and taking a step back, what are those skills? I think that we can get lost so into the activities of work. So we often forget, and one of the trends too, I think maybe it's kind of always kind of interwoven, but when we hear about skills, it's also about moving away from just thinking about transactional interactions within the workplace to get work done. Is not just these units of transactional work, is not just these activities, right? We really are starting to see a shift towards business objectives and outcomes. What are we hoping to achieve? How are we defining done? How, what is that future state that we're looking to move towards? And as we think about AI, then we're able to think about the skills needed to achieve those outcomes. And then how do we start to think in advance of how are we supporting employees, both emotionally and providing them with the resources to upskill and reskill?
I think then, when you think about some of this one, for example, the last point that you already touched upon here, I think in one of the surveys that you mentioned here, I mean, this expectation that we are all feeling of stagility, right? This is a new term that a lot of people are now starting to hear, because one day you could say something like, hey, we want to slow down and we want to do this thing, giving indications of stability. But next day, you again, kind of this AI-driven conversation comes in on how quickly we have to evolve.
Yeah.
So what do you see in the market here with this term now?
Stagility. I wish I heard it more. I wish I heard it more because it's so important. I often think through, but I think we've become so siloed in our work, and by losing how I am tied to that mission, by doing all the things, by not being clear on what are we aligned to, what are the few goals, by the lack of communication and alignment, we have leaders just say, go do AI, go do more with less, go do this. But then the question is, why? Why are you asking me to do AI? How does that tie back to our goals? How does that tie back to our mission? And so this, once again, right, is like, where are we breaking down because we are moving too quick? I love Stagility because this essence of pause, in the art of pause, and asking why. And what is it we're looking to achieve together? How is this moving the needle forward? Where am I at today? And what is the progress we anticipate to make? But I think in doing that, by creating stagility and an essence of, we're not going to ask you to change overnight. This is also going down into simplifying work, the speed of change. And we often haven't even given up old ways of working to take in the new because we haven't been mindful. We're just adding on more and more.
Right. That's so key, right? That, when I know that ties right into simplifying,
Yes.
because, you can't really just add things. You have to subtract as well. You say that, we're going to do AI, and then we're also not going to do that. I mean, tying back to the employee experience, one of the things that I heard some of the customers, some of them who might be on the call, they say that they have this annual survey. No, it's not annual survey, monthly survey that goes out to their employees. They have one place in the application where they define who does what. They say, okay, then they send the monthly survey saying that this is who does what. This is your job title. This is your job profile. Now you tell us, the employee, and what is the overlap with, is that what you're actually doing? I said,
Yes.
no, that's only like 35% of what I'm doing.
Thank you, Amrinder, because you're going back to co-design. And you're talking about, it's not just these leaders making these AI decisions, and then employees, where they've been kind of like broken from, they're not doing the day-to-day job. And so what is that day-to-day job? And having the employees be able to speak into what are the pain points? What is occurring today? If I understand where we're heading, where I'm at today, where might I be concerned? And understanding even in those, how might I be afraid? Where do I have questions about that? And be able to co-design and feel like you have a voice in what is happening, but you also look at the workplace ecosystem in that way. And how are the individuals aligned or not in that, to be able to see the gaps to inform a true AI strategy? Because when we see these statistics of 90% of what AI implemented in workplaces has failed, when you really dig into that, it started from a place of, we're just doing AI, but we never took the time to really think, what was it that we were looking to accomplish? What were the outcomes? How are we looking at the place of work? And I also think too, that because we haven't thought about microdosing change and understanding that we as humans, just from a neuroscience standpoint, can only do so much change at a time. And how are we communicating and supporting and getting feedback? And then the managers, with the reduction in support of manager capability and leadership and development, your last point there on that last slide was so key, because change is all about behavioral change and learning. And without the soft skills for change, we can only get so far. And so that's when we think about AI tech and integration, Amrinder, to your point, I feel like all these are so interwoven that we're not going to ever be able to do that well if we aren't all together understanding how is the work aligned or not. Because AI is done really well. If you want to do AI, it's done really well when we have clear outcomes, when we understand the manual moments in our work that we're able to automate, that we're able to understand, how is this being done today? Like turning on your like Teams window or Zoom and record and share screen and speak through, this is how all the steps that I'm doing to get this one piece of work done. take the transcription of that and then start to like work with ChatGPT to help you. Often we don't have clear workflows or even understanding ourselves because we're not stopping to take a moment of, yeah, what are all the steps and decision points that I am walking through to get to this one piece of paper that's filled out in a form?
So Mindy, I think also another point, I know that some of this also goes into the next slide, but just we have to keep in mind that a lot of people who, especially from the audience who's on today, there's a big diversity between the kinds of work different people do.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
example, I did notice when
Agreed.
people were joining that a lot of people are hospitality customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means a hotel. So that means when they think about work from home, there is no work from home
That's right. Yeah.
from there. There's no work
Yeah.
from there's no work from home when all the construction companies who because they still have to design employee experience that matters to them as well.
Uh-huh.
They
Yes.
still have to
Yes.
design, but everybody has to show up on their work site on time, or if they're not going to be able to show up, then be able to make alternate
Well,
arrangements. And I think that's just so important. I don't know, Ellen, how you kind of measure all these different things as well, that because just considering the disparity of different things that people are trying to do.
oh, I was just saying
Right.
one last thing. Is that
Sure, go
okay?
ahead.
I,
Yeah,
I think that
please.
brings up such a point around diversity, equity, inclusion, and the flexibility of where are our employees doing work, going back to personas. Because
Yes, I was gonna
often
say that.
the personas of like, where are they working? What tools do they have today? Because we often, like in plants and manufacturing, we're missing the people that are frontline workers. They don't even have access to a computer. Sometimes they don't even have access to the employee surveys to fill them out. And the portals that maybe they have to go to the workplace. What happens if they don't have a car? I mean, it's all the transportation and everything. And so that's where we start to see the need to job shadow, to actually go and walk in their shoes and follow them and gather the data.
I learned that firsthand. I was speaking to some customer, this was in South Africa, and I asked them this question. I said, what tool do they have? And they told me something very simple. If they only have access to ClayHR app, that's the only thing they have. So if the app does not allow them to do
Awesome.
that, they don't have that. So in ClayHR mobile app, they can request a leave, they can clock in, clock out, they can file survey, they can do an assignment, but there's certain things that they cannot do. So I said the answer is super simple. If we can't ask them to do something that on the go they don't have. So they don't have.
Right.
If that's only 5 things that we can ask them to do, if
Yeah.
based on the things that they do, that's the only common things that they're able to. So I just
Yeah,
thought,
I'm sorry for interrupting, because like if we think about, if we do have people here in hospitality too, or manufacturing, the other question that goes even deeper, and we missed this, one of the companies I was working with, when I asked the question, they had like, oh my goodness, we never thought about it. We're not even hearing from these certain shifts when the survey time was going out, because they're not allowed to have their phone. So if it was a ClayHR place, they wouldn't have even been able to answer the survey because they can't have their phone during their shift on the floor.
right. And exactly. And even in this case, the hospitality employees that are there, they don't even have social media on their,
Yeah.
for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Not only things such as time wastage, but even because of customer privacy, etc. You can't post a picture.
Yeah.
They're concerned that just a celebrity walks in, and then you feel so you feel so
Right.
thrilled that you
Right.
take a picture, but that's invading that guest's privacy. So things like that. Anyway, Ellen, I know that we want to talk about some of those things, but I did just wanted you to make sure that you talk about what are some of the micro moments that matter. I mean, it's not just a question of just making the employees happy, but still there are a lot of different things.
What are some examples of the things that are part of the employee experience? Yes, I agree. It makes it more tangible. And it's something to keep in mind as we go through these examples. The employee experience, the experience that, say, a department manager might have, might be different from the experience that one of their employees in Poland has, right? Which might be different from the experience, for example, the experience that someone who works on the manufacturing line has. So again, that's why it's really important, like they were saying about the personalization, because it is really different for every employee. Now, not that you can customize for everyone, but again, if you create these profiles and personas of the different types of employees and just walk through their journey through any given moment or activity, then you can kind of think about what are the dynamics that are going to make or break that experience. So, for example, we mentioned before that the employee experience really starts from the time, even when people are interviewing and accept the job, all the way till the time they leave, right? But it's also their experiences, I should say, aren't just built overnight. Just like culture, for example. Culture is something that happens, that is the foundation and kind of steers a lot of the experience, right? But it's just not this one event. It's a bunch of different moments that happen every day that shape how they feel about their employer. Oh, we're still you
Oh,
shifted too
sorry.
fast. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a bunch of different things, but I think the important thing, I think I recall, even Mindy, when you and I were speaking the couple of weeks ago, that it is just the point that you have to make them, you have to design them with that intention. You just have to know that. And that's why it's, if it's okay, I go to the next one,
Oh,
because the co-walking with them,
co-design.
co-designing, it's so important, because if you don't know exactly what that person's going to be doing, how exactly they're going to shop, it's very difficult to design that with that intention.
Right, exactly. And then again, like I was saying, the onboarding experience for someone who has been, working in their career for 10 years is going to be very different for someone who this is their first job, right? This is their first job out of college, and it's a very different environment for them. So you may want to consider having, some slight differences to the way you're onboarding people who are, this is their first job versus the rest of your employees. So having those personalized journeys for their onboarding process, involving the managers, involving the teams, and not just obviously relying on HR to do that. Um, and have it be, that can be, obviously, if you got 3,000 employees and you're doing that, that can be very, very time consuming. So that's where small HR departments have a challenge. So that's where technology can kind of help facilitate that. And then growth, right? People want to feel like they have a way forward, whether it's a higher level position or whether they want to broaden their skills and expertise, that they actually know that it's been pre-thought out for them. Here are the kind of options or directions you can go while you work at this company. And then they're able to look at those and have access to that information at any time. And then recognition, right? Recognition isn't just off the track. You can actually use systems and technology to help, again, I use this word facilitate a lot, but to help kind of facilitate a culture of recognition and provide opportunities to provide recognition and reward throughout the experience. So again, employees know where they're going. It's important that managers have the tools to guide and coach them. And then everyone feels seen, valued, and included.
And everyone feels like valued. What you said is, I think there are a lot of different ways you can do that. And I just want to give you a couple of slides on how exactly, there are some examples, a lot of different customers use these things. We can walk through them. Actually, let me just go to some snapshots, which is the easy way. So one of the easiest wins that we see is whenever the customers launch an applause program. And like you said, Ellen, doing the culture building doesn't take one day. It's not just you just come one day and you say that we're going to have this culture. It takes some time to build it. But once you decide that, and you have a buy-in, because you can talk about, again, the mission of the organization. You can talk about what exactly is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And then once you do that, you launch an applause program, and then all your managers have a buy-in. Then they are going to be able to make sure that all the employees feel valued. And one of the things that we see is that once the organizations have launched a successful applause program, their employee engagement numbers go up easily. Just that because people feel that they are heard, people feel that they are viewed, people feel that they are being valued, and sometimes they also feel that their peers are being valued. That's also a very interesting thing, because it's possible that an employee did not receive feedback or an applause from their manager directly, but at least their friend did, at least their peer did. So one, they're happy for them, but they also know that, hey, I also have an opportunity. There are tools in place, there are mechanisms in place, and there's a culture in place where good work will be valued. And that immediately makes that go up. I mean, it's not the only way, but for example, you were talking about the onboarding. Onboarding, I feel, is kind of, for many organizations, onboarding is, and I call it like the magic lamp that was never used.
Right.
If there's a
Yeah.
magic lamp, it's right there. All you had to do was to rub it, and then the genie would come out with your 3 wishes, but you didn't use it. And
Yeah. It tends to
onboarding
be
is a
very
great
poorly executed. I agree. Yeah.
onboarding is a great opportunity if you're going to walk them through what the company's mission is. If they have to watch a video, they're still joining. There's going to take them some time to understand what are their aspirations, and they're coming with a blank slate right now, right? Their aspirations are not being muddied with what's here, right? They're just like, you can understand their aspirations from a clean slate. You can also give them the guidance about what company really values, what the mission is right then and there. They can absorb it. If you can go a little further into asking them what would they do to align with that mission, that would really be, that would really go a long way. And sometimes you can also distribute this particular responsibility to say, the new person is joining. So Kevin is joining, but Mindy, you are going to be taking Kevin for the first day lunch, right? So it is also your responsibility to talk about how the company's mission actually flows in, and how it's actually meaningful, right? So otherwise it's not really just for that person to do. Okay, so I'll just talk. I know you talked about this career ladders and this part here. Again, I find this to be that as long as the company can publish their career ladders, and many of the people who are on the call, maybe you can already recognize, if you don't see what screen I'm at, I'll just quickly help you orient to it. This is just the employee record page where you're kind of looking at one employee and their career plan. So you can see where they are, where they can go next. And this immediately tells them, okay, this is what's in the offing for me, right? This is where I can go. And not only that, they can also see what exactly are their gaps. If there are gaps, how they can fulfill them, what kind of learning resources they have, what kind of counselors they have in the organization from whom they can learn, as well as where that particular role could lead to next. Or if they want to explore something else, they say, okay, well, I'm very glad where I am, and I can understand where I could go next. But also, maybe I want to take on a different role at the organization. What else is out there? I understand that I'll have to learn, but how else I can learn, and what other positions I can take to. I don't know, Ellen, if you see what are some of the advantages, and Mindy, what do you think that the organizations tend to benefit when they put such a mechanism in place?
Well, I can say from my experience at Apple with the retail employees, the employees that worked in the store, I think there were, a lot of employees who had ambitions, right? Maybe they had ambitions to be the store manager, right? But in other cases, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't want to necessarily be in management, but they wanted to perhaps broaden their experience beyond the store environment, right? And find out kind of what it was like to work in one of the corporate roles, right? Or to expand their area of expertise as far as from a product standpoint. And so it was really helpful to actually give them and have it always be available for them to be able to make decisions about how they could grow in their career. And it didn't necessarily just have to be about going to a higher position. So it's knowing they have a choice and some empowerment and clear visibility to a career path at that company.
Right. And I know that this AI piece, we've already talked about this a little bit, but I think it's very important for the people who specifically who are in the middle to high layers of their HR department, for them to recognize on how exactly they can actually design these employee experiences. They understand that, or I hope that everyone does, that just by having a good thought and a good sentiment
Mm-hmm.
is not going to change your EX strategy and EX execution. You have to actually build it within the system so the logistics of it are straightforward, and that it happens smoothly whenever whenever anybody joins, that particular experience flows through it. So what advice do you think you can give, Mindy, so that when somebody who has not yet done anything into it today, right, what are top 3 things that they should do and they should put in the system so at least their EX strategy starts to take some shape, right, some form here?
Mhm. I think first of all, what we've talked about so much just in summary, because it's a skip that can't be stepped, is understanding the current state.
Mm-hmm.
What are what are we doing today? What is it that we're looking to achieve? Like, what is that future desired state? And in the current state, we'll often find things that we don't actually have a clear way. 5 people are doing something in a different way, so it's hard to put a system on, right? And so it is good to really think through where are we at today, where are we heading, so that you don't just purchase a system for today, but they're also purchasing a system that you can grow with, that's going to actually get you to where you want to be.
So important.
And so really building out that product roadmap, I would say, of experience helps and inform in the RFP process, even your clear criteria that you need from a system. And then it's about thinking through how because we talked with employees, because we have two-way dialogue, we've done all the things that Ellen's talked about. Now they're a part of the decision point to purchase a solution. I also love too, is even doing a mock-up. If we don't have a lot of money, how do we know this system is the right way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Being able to do prototypes and mock-ups and get people to interact with what it could look like is another touch point to get employees involved again, to help them feel like they're a part of the decision process. So once you do choose a system, and when you launch the system, also, often systems have many, many features. And so by having a cadence of slowly turning them on and building it. So I love about ClayHR, you can start doing one thing with ClayHR and grow up and turn on all the things. And so you're asking people to change, starting with one thing, the most often the biggest pain point, before we start to build on that and build those practices of change. But then, because we've been bringing the employees along, we've been communicating, we're launching this great new system. We heard you. This is where we're going to start. This is the one thing we're going to start with. And this is how we anticipate that change to happen. And then when you roll it out, you often find greater adoption, greater usage, and you have those two-way feedback dialogues. So you're also getting feedback of what's working and not. So then you actually can refine and really hone in.
Can I add just something really important? For me, my perspective is that systems are not just the tools and the technology, but it's consistent policies, consistent processes, et cetera, that then are automated perhaps through tools and technology systems. But you have to have that to start with as well. And as well, always have a clear eye on what the company is trying to accomplish and what outcomes the company is looking for, and how can you enable the employees, right, to then help drive that success.
That's
yeah.
I was just gonna say that's exactly what I say. Like, for example, when a customer is using ClayHR, I say, okay, that's the system is one part of it, but you still do need to listen to the industry experts, such as yourself, who are saying what are the best practices around it, you know?
Mhm.
And I'll also mention this part here. I was going to mention this here, but I'll skip this one because I wanted to show you this one here. Like Mindy, when you were saying that the modular nature of it, right? Many times organizations, especially during an initial conversation, somebody will look at this slide with me, or they'll look at the system with me, and they will say, this is what I want. And I say to them, that's great, except you still have a journey to maybe to get there. For example, if you have to do, you know, if you have to do, the system is going to look like this, but is it going to be truly impactful for you? Because that would,
Mhm.
you know, for example, in this, if I can just set the context here, we're looking at an employee, we're looking at
Yeah.
their competencies and skills, and we're looking at where they are, where they should be, what's their trend is, and if you want to start a new assessment, or if you want to give them some guidance on what learning to take. So when they look at it, this feels very exciting to them, but
Mhm.
still there are two different steps that they should plan
That's
to
right.
take before, which is their
Mhm.
job design, as well as which is their um, you know, the job design and how to identify the
Yeah.
right
Right.
competencies
And
here.
so often employees don't have this visibility, right? The manager has this, HR has this, but the employee doesn't have that opportunity, you know, once a month to kind of go in and see, how am I moving towards my career goal?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I think when they see this thing and they say, okay, I can give my employee that experience that tells them that you alone are both in charge and empowered to make the
Mm-hmm.
right decision for your
Right.
own career trajectory, right?
Mhm.
Of course, there's always noise all around us, right? There's always, I mean, I would be out there playing soccer if this stupid rain was not falling, right? There's always noise around us, but within this thing here, within this, I can say that what are the decisions I can make. So the noise aside, what's happening outside the office aside, but we still have the power to do that. So when they see this thing here, say, okay, there's a learning out there. All I have to do is I have to carve out some time and do it, right? So when they see that, okay, I know that we're coming up to some of the key takeaways as well, and I want to leave some time for Q&A here. So if you guys have a questions and answers, please, which I'm sure many of you do, you're feel free to use the Q&A box to answer.
Yeah, we have some ones in there. They're good.
So we go through that. But before that, I did want to, Ellen and Mindy, I did want you
Mhm.
guys to help us through at least through the key takeaways first, or do you guys want to do the Q&A first?
Yeah, let's
Let
do
me,
the, oh, go ahead. I think we can go through the questions
okay, let's go
and
through
then
the
sum
questions
it
here.
up.
Let me see here. Okay, let me start with this one from Kelvin. Where does AI fit naturally into improving employee experience without replacing the human touch? Mindy, what do you think?
I think this is where you don't just do AI. I think
Yeah,
when you do AI, you lose the human touch. I think if you've done it in a really thoughtful way, it's going to feel like it's augmenting the work because you've really taken the time to see how is work currently being done to truly simplify it in a way that's going to up level and really take the work that people are doing, because it's taking usually away all the manual tasks, all
Mhm.
the low data entry, and being able to help that individual actually do the strategic things they always wish they could get to but never do.
Like, think about in HR how many, you know, administrative, you know, tasks there are.
Mhm.
And as we said, you know, if you're going to start creating these more personalized, customized experiences, that's a lot of work, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
detail. But if you're using, you know, AI or other forms of technology, right, to help streamline that for you so that you can actually accomplish that goal of truly delivering this, you know, the kind of experience you're trying to deliver to every employee, then AI has been an asset.
Right. Or you create, like if there's a desire for employees to have something like what you're sharing on the screen, for them to have access that from even their phone or their hospitality worker, like you were mentioning, at any moment, 24/7, when humans may no longer be working, they are able to access a resource to help them with some of their initial questions, so that when they do need to get to a human, they have a more informed, specific question, or maybe no question at all, because they were able to get to it on a Saturday night at midnight.
That's right. So let me ask this other question too, which I think is also very, very key here. This answer was asked anonymously. I don't know who asked it, but how can organizations involve employees in shaping their own experience instead of just rolling out top-down initiatives? I think answer may come, Mindy, from the thing that you were mentioning earlier, core design, but would you add something more to that as well?
Yeah, I think that as we start to get really clear and aligned on what is the role of you as an individual in driving the mission, you start to have trust in an organization and agency and autonomy, and then individuals start to, and they have a voice. They want to have impact. It helps them be able to think about and take the initiative to even start to, I'm seeing this as a pain point. Here's an opportunity to improve. What are some ways that I'm able to play and innovate and already start to think about how to solve this thing, and to be able to, maybe it's something that's within my realm of authority to just go do, right? Because that's so clear, because there's such alignment in our organization, or I have seen something that now I can propose to my manager, because I know that this is above my level of authority, but I know that they love to hear about new ideas, and we've created this space with guardrails to play in, and I can go and propose the ideas to them.
Got it.
Yeah, and if I could add something there as well. I mean, just think about something like, say you've identified that there's some challenges, issues, ways of improvement for your performance management process. Each 6 months or year, however you execute. What if as you're trying to think, you've identified, okay, here's some of the issues, but let's talk to the different people who are impacted in different ways throughout the performance management process, right? It's the employees, it's the managers of employees who are also employees, and it's also the HR team and senior management. But before you design the solution, you're actually, like we said, we talked about co-design. You're actually involving those, not everybody, let's not all 500 managers, for example, but you have a cohort of managers or of individual contributors who are participating in a kind of a brainstorm session and trying to discover where are different types of employees in different roles having issues and challenges. Is it with the technology? Is it with the way the managers are handling these? Is it the content? Is it the volume of stuff happening over because you're waiting to do this once a year? Or could it be something that's done incrementally, like each quarter? So you not only use them in identifying where the challenges are, but then as well identifying the solutions. Like, what is it that would help this be less challenging for you?
Right.
And so that's where they feel empowered and they play that role in the process.
So let's do this thing, because there was one other question I wanted to take on. I know we've gone through most of the time today here, but I will ask you one last question here. I think this is probably, well, the question is, are there key KPIs that we should be tracking to understand our success metrics in EX? I mean, many times, I'll show you one slide here.
Yeah.
And I think this question was asked by, I think Kelvin, but please, yeah, check through the Q&A. Who asked?
Sam Bankston.
Oh, that's right. So this slide here does kind of show you a little bit of what different metrics you can start to measure, but ENPS still is a good measure here. It's a good I would say it still is a gold standard that you should be using to measure that here. But again, we are just a different variety of different dashboards that you can make sure you're able to compare people you're able to compare metrics at the department level, at location level, because then that kind of helps you see where exactly some of the initiatives that are going very well versus some of the initiatives that may need more work are. And that's what we recommend. But I know we're at time here, so I'll ask you, Mindy, here to just kind of give us a key takeaways. We've gone through the hour very, very, very quickly. Please just help us with this.
This could be a two-parter or a three-parter. I think the most important thing is a personalization. I think that is so key. If there's something you're not doing today, and you don't have to spend money around personalization. Who are my employees? What are those personas? How am I talking? How am I hearing from them? What are the employee stages in our organization? And where are we missing the mark? Where are we not supporting them in the moments that matter within that employee journey, but even in how work is being done in that flow of work? And small moments really do create big impact. And that's so true. That nothing is too small. Even if we think about a meeting audit and how are we using meetings, maybe, and who are in the meetings. I mean, these are small things that actually make a huge difference. And you can't fix what you don't see. You need to have a two-way dialogue. You cannot just have leaders in a dark room making decisions. We have got to have enough trust in our organizations to have co-designing conversations with our employees. They must be a part of that, especially with AI being able to be implemented correctly. And agentic AI, EX at scale, and intelligent agents acting on behalf of employees. When you do have employees co-designing and being able to highlight how work is actually done and those manual things that AI can truly augment and become a team member in doing, that definitely helps, right, with the well-being and being able to think about how to do this change in a thoughtful way. And really, at the end of the day, we should never be doing anything that doesn't drive business outcomes that support our mission.
Exactly. And I'll just mention quickly about the fourth point here, agentic AI EX at scale. There is a separate webinar that's coming up that just focuses entirely on that. So please feel free to tune into that. And otherwise, I'll thank everyone here. I know we're a couple of minutes over, but thank you, everyone. This hour went by really fast. Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Mindy, for taking the time. And I think this is a really important conversation, really pertinent to what people are trying to do today. And I hope everyone took away something they can immediately implement, something they can immediately benefit their organizations with here.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's so important.
Yeah. Thank you.